as we are, developing real estate in that community and recruiting businesses to come into the neighborhood, the first question that anyone wants to ask is, well, is it safe here? Um, we're building this 4 or 5 acre project and it's a nonprofit and it's so scrappy. It's so just kind of like pulling up by the bootstraps. And
The
so
key
I don't have
word is
money.
scrappy.
Yes, I do not have money for, an on-site human being as a security presence. And so I thought, well, you know what? Our police station, the nearest police station, it's a bit of a ways away. Why don't we create what I called a comfort stop for the police and just to have dedicate one room on this campus specifically to them, and they will have refreshments, bottled water, just a clean space to use the bathroom, all of that.
Welcome to Civically Grown, where change makers share the roots of their leadership and the impact they're cultivating today. I'm your host, Dr. Shaniece Criss. Today we have China Terrell. She is a commercial real estate developer and attorney. And in 2025, Ms. Terrell founded Peace.Legal, a law firm and economic development consultancy that champions businesses as a powerful force for building thriving communities. Before opening her firm, Ms. Terrell served as CEO of American Communities Trust, a nonprofit focused on community revitalization through commercial real estate development. In 2020, she was recognized by the Baltimore Sun Women to Watch. Thank you so much for being on this podcast today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on here, but I'm always excited to see your beautiful face.
Thank you. And I feel likewise. So I start this podcast with the same question to everyone.
Okay.
What song best represents your growth as a leader and why?
Got it. I don't have a song because I don't have a life soundtrack in that way. But for me, it's less music and it's more aphorisms or sayings or proverbs or simple truths, right? That I can hold on to. There is one saying that has always stuck with me because my mom would always say it. And that saying was, "You're only as good as your last move."
You're only as good as your last move, and that
Yes,
you
and
feel
that
really
is
applies to
actually the
you.
great news, that you are as good as your last move.
I like
And my mom
that.
would tell me that if ever I made a mistake or I came home and I didn't feel great about something, "You're only as good as your last move, so get back out there and make another one that's different from the one you made before," right? You can always write your future and you can always rewrite whatever has happened in the past if you're not quite happy with it or comfortable with it, whatever the case may be. There's another little saying too that just is always in my heart, is that the thing that I see is never the end result. And for me, that's incredibly encouraging because it just reminds me that whatever I'm seeing, whatever is before me, it's not the total picture. It's definitely not the end. You can always continue to shape something to be what you really envision it to be in the end. I believe those things have really guided and shaped how I view the world and how I view my roles and my responsibilities as a leader. You're only as good as your last move. And the thing that you see is never the end result. And there's another piece of that. The thing that you see is never the end result. Every blessing gets better. Anything that's bad can be reversed, right? And so I just really love that.
I really love that too because some people, that could be encouraging. Some people feel like they have no hope left.
Oh yeah.
But that second one, especially, that really, really exemplifies hope. So thank you
Oh
for sharing
yes.
that.
Yes.
So now let's talk about your experiences when you were young in leadership.
Yes.
What's one or two experiences that you think really shaped you?
So my most formative experience really happened through church. So much of what I did when I was growing up that was so large or so impactful really came through the church that I grew up in. Now, I was the president of the youth group at the church at some point. You know, you start out as like a vice president, and then I became the president of the youth group at the church. And that youth group was called Youth Against Peer Pressure, but we all called it YAP for short. So YAP had, everyone in it from probably the seventh and eighth grade all the way up to the 12th grade. We had junior and senior banquets. We had programs and activities and different events. Like we did so much together. Just to give you a sense, when I started going to the church when I was probably about 6 years old, the church had about 384 members. By the time I graduated from high school, right? So the year that I was ending as president of the youth group, the church had more than 23,000 members. So there was so much to do in that church, and there were so many resources. The church eventually had its own credit union. It had its own clinic for the members. It had so much. And
That's
so
amazing.
yeah, and so it was just this really incredible experience. I absolutely loved it, and that for me was my most formative leadership experience growing up. I had a lot of leadership experiences growing up. I was in student government, I was president of my class, and that was during the 11th grade. I skipped my senior year, so I wasn't actually in school during my 12th grade year. I'd already gone to college. But I had so many experiences, but my most formative one is the experience that I had at my church growing up as president of that Youth Against Peer Pressure.
So I love to hear more, like a very vivid, specific memory from that time.
I really loved to create things. So I was always thinking through what kind of program can I put together or what kind of event can I have? And then I would write a proposal and then send it to the church leadership. And I would say, can we have, this kind of event or variety show or whatever the case may be on this Friday? And, could we get the old sanctuary, blah, blah, blah. And then I would get permission back. And ordinarily it was a yes or, something like that, and then I would put together the big event and bring in people and work with others and build a team, and then we would plan our big event, whatever it was. Usually like a show, a variety thing. And I don't sing, I don't dance, like I don't have any remarkable talents, that you
You
like.
do have remarkable talent.
I don't have the kind of remarkable talents that would make me Taylor Swift type money.
Most of us don't have Taylor Swift type money, so
I
that's
don't have
okay.
voice, so I don't songwrite, none of that. But I love just you know what? I guess I do have a remarkable talent, but Quincy Jones had a real talent. I was gonna say I have the Quincy Jones talent of putting people together. I'm a very good producer. That's what I would do, and those are my formative experiences. I would usually MC the event. I love to do that, and then we would always have a male and a female, so we would MC the event together and then play off of one another, and so it was just so much fun, and everybody would have a great time and everyone would participate. What I learned from that is that I was never afraid to ask to do anything. I was never afraid to come up with an idea and put it to the leadership and say, "What if we did this?" I was never afraid to come up with something that people would enjoy that I thought would kind of grow the group or, contribute something to people's just happiness or devotional experience or whatever the case may be. Mhm.
I wanna ask a follow-up question. You
Sure.
said you made proposals. Did the church have a process, or did you come up with proposal making?
I would write a letter, and I would say what I wanted to do, and I would put together an outline, and then I would send it to whomever I thought should be in charge.
That showed so much initiative. That's really good skills, and you had logistics, you had the vision.
I remember doing a lot. Ninth grade, I think took a step back and just said, let me figure out what high school is all about.
And so you had the insight to take a step back. Sometimes in leadership, especially with young leaders, they think they have to do everything all the time, but you were
No,
so wise
I
to
think that,
say,
yeah, in ninth grade, I was definitely more chill. I felt that thought, I'm in high school now. Let me understand the lay of the land. And Let me just be present and experience it.
As I heard you talk about your process, it makes me think about someone at work and what the process is. So, how do
Oh,
you think those early leadership experiences shaped how you lead today?
Um, I I like to think of myself as very scrappy, and I love being scrappy. I love having something that's not quite right, that's a little bit off, that's not functioning in the way that it should, and then being given that, and and then having the mandate to just build it, make it work, fix it, whatever the case may be, and then just having that opportunity to tinker with a goal or an objective or something that needs to happen, and like help that come into fruition. And so but the thing that I think that gives me the edge in that is being a little bit scrappy and being willing to think outside of the box. So let me give you a present day leadership experience, right? So when I was the CEO of the nonprofit, which I only left this past November, so I started my own firm this past May. But
Hmm.
when I was the CEO of the nonprofit doing commercial real estate development, um, our main project was in a distressed neighborhood that was emerging. So a neighborhood that was in the process of experiencing or very desirous of experiencing a turnaround. However, as the neighborhood was turning around, there's still a lot to battle in terms of, small things that pop up in the neighborhood that are less than desirable that you don't want to happen, maybe a car getting broken into or anything like that. And you also have to battle the perception, right? The long held perception that people have in their head of this neighborhood. And even
Right.
if the neighborhood is changing, that perception can stay for years beyond what the on the ground reality is in that community, right? And so as we are, developing real estate in that community and recruiting businesses to come into the neighborhood, the first question that anyone wants to ask is, well, is it safe here? Um, you know, who's here? How is it at night? All of that. The first thing that they care about understanding is the crime, right? And so, we're building this 4 or 5 acre project, and it's a nonprofit, and it's so scrappy. So just kind of like pulling up by the bootstraps. And
The
so
key
I don't have
word is
money.
scrappy.
Yes, I do not have money for, um, an on-site human being as a security presence, right? So we're bordering Johns Hopkins University, and on the Johns Hopkins campus, so beautiful, so lovely. They have these kiosks set up along the sidewalk at different points throughout the blocks, and there's a person in there who is security, right? So I don't have money for security kiosks. I don't have money for guards to come and walk through the campus periodically and to just be a presence. So what we ended up doing is, after there were actually a couple of car break-ins, and I thought this project is never going to work if word gets out, or if, I can't turn this around. And so I thought, well, you know what? Our police station, the nearest police station, it's a bit of a ways away. Why don't we create what I called a comfort stop for the police, and just to have dedicate one room on this campus specifically to them, and they will have refreshments, bottled water, just a clean space to use the bathroom, all of that. Now, little did I know that we started this 1 week before COVID hit, right? Remember when COVID hit, we all thought we would just be home for like a week or two. And and in fact, we were home for more than a year. I don't know, it was crazy, right? So that happened 1 week before COVID. And to kick it off, I invited all of the police from that particular district to come for free lunch. And I explained, here's the code for the keypad. You all are welcome here anytime. This is your room. And we branded it the volunteer comfort stop, right? Didn't want to call it a substation, not trying to get political, just a comfort stop. And the police said, oh, okay. And then they took to it and they started showing up. And then during COVID, when everything is shut down, they really started showing up. And then I had no idea that female police officers, at least where we are, when female police officers have to go to the restroom, they actually need to take off their gun belt to go to the restroom. And so going to a restroom where the bottom of the stall is open is key, for a female police officer, which I had not known before, I had not appreciated or realized. And so the female officers especially loved coming to our private clean bathrooms, right? Where it was just a completely closed individual stall. They loved that. And over time, we had more than 7,000 drop ins in a year from the police. And they were so grateful. And they would stop me, they would stop my staff, they would say, "Thank you so much because no one does anything nice for us." And they were so happy, and the whole thing took on a life of its own. And then in the neighborhood, our campus became known as, "Oh, that place where the police always are." We loved it. Our tenants loved it. The community loved it because then if the community ever had anything happen and with them, they just walked over to our campus to try to catch a cop. And it just worked out for everyone. Everyone was happy because the police weren't there in a way that felt as though they were occupying the neighborhood or kind of bearing down on these people. It was much more like just this friendly kind of, "We're sharing space with you, like, this is great." Everyone loved it. And so that is a situation of just kind of being scrappy, thinking outside of the box, realizing I don't have the resources for all of these other sorts of things that you would typically get if you want to like kind of secure a campus. But what we ended up recreating, you know, after a month or so, it wasn't even about the campus anymore because the police took to it so well. And it was really about serving our citizens in uniform and, appreciating the sacrifices that they were making to do the job as well. And so that was one of the things that I really, really loved. But that, comes from knowing how not to be afraid to ask for things, not to be afraid to create things, not to be afraid to invite people into something new. All that proposal writing, I'm in the 10th grade, at church, like, "Oh, I think this would be a great idea if we did this, and here's how it would go, and here's my agenda, and blah, blah." I had to do the same thing with the police. Like, "Oh, I think it would be a great idea if you all came to visit. Why don't you come for free lunch? And da 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 da. And here's your code. You can come anytime." Sort of dovetails. Same skill set, completely transferred.
It totally transferred, and I
Yeah,
love
you
just
didn't
the
have any security
innovation.
incidents on campus after that.
I love that it totally transferred and you had all the innovation and how you made that connection. Like that was in you and you were able to use your leadership early and able to use it now and still making such a huge impact. But to
Yes.
me, again, just putting it out there, that's true innovation. A lot of people would say we want to interact with the police in our community, but making sure that people know they're there if they need them. And you did
Mhm,
all of that.
mhm.
And I'm sure the cost that was more effective than if you had hired a full-time police
It was
presence there.
totally. But not only that, but it was doing so much greater good, right? I could have spent
Yes.
3 times as much having a physical person present, but instead, I just took the opportunity cost of dedicating the space to the police, and they were there at 3 in the morning, at 2 in the morning, they were there at 5 in the morning because the police work 24/7.
That's right. But I didn't think
And
about
so
them being there all the time.
the time that the space was most used was the middle of the night, and after a couple of years, they just appreciated that amenity so much, that we completely renovated the entire space and created a true lounge with, beautiful countertops and cabinets and everything. It was wonderful. And they would come in the morning and drop off their lunch so that it was there for them at lunchtime. Like it was great. But it's easy to for it to be great because in Baltimore it's like sometimes there isn't a lot of money that goes into public facilities, and so it was a lot nicer, than the actual station itself.
Okay. Well, you knew
Yeah.
what would attract people there and
Yeah.
made it work.
Yeah, we did, and we kept enhancing it, like, just responding to, what was helping the officers be their but what was helping them to be the best version of themselves in the community.
Well, I love to know what advice would you pass on for people who are in the same stage of their career as you are, and then for young leaders?
I guess what I wanna say is, how do you become a great leader? I don't know that there's a set path or any sort of a specific path. And I believe that it's something that gets put together in a very individualized way along the way, right? Along the way by the person who has the leadership responsibility. And so that path can always be tweaked or adjusted or, rewritten or enhanced. And I think that's the beauty of it. Leadership is an ongoing learning, it's an ongoing process. I would, you know, I don't know, maybe others would say that there's a certain point at which you arrive. I don't know that I feel that I have ever or will ever arrive at being that most effective leader. I can arrive to feel that I am where I am supposed to be in my life, right? In the sense that I am in my calling, right?
Right?
But then the expression of that and the doing of that, that is such a process. That's the journey. And I don't know that it ever ends. And I think that the end is the actual journey of it, the building of it along the way and the continual learning, right? So I suppose I would just say to someone else to go easy on yourself and to take the time to be reflective and to know that the best leaders make a lot of mistakes and that those mistakes are just fine because the great news is that you are as good as your last move.
I love that. You brought it back full circle.
Yes, and my husband loves to remind me because he's a big baseball fan. He loves to say, the best hitters, they only do it about 33% of the time.
Got our sports statistics in there.
Right,
Keeps
right,
everything
right,
in
right,
perspective.
right. And I believe that leadership is that way too, because you're dealing with people and projects and vision and implementation and execution. There's so many moving parts that are happening when you're a leader and sort of developing the like refining one's ability to be adept in each of those skill spaces, right? That's a journey.
That is a journey, and I totally agree with what you shared. I don't think anybody's ever made it, but we can have contentment. Love that metaphor. It's a journey, and we just keep going on it.
Yeah, right. For me, faith is a huge part of it, but I do know that the best leaders, or at least the ones whom I truly admire, the leaders whom
Mhm.
I truly admire, they're very focused on being reflective and they're very focused on laying out values at the outset, right? Because it's that kind of understanding one's values that keep one on course, keep one tethered to a path that makes sense for that individual, right? And then the process of reflection is kind of where you're able to get that sort of self reflection in. I mean, that self correction in, excuse me. But through reflection, we can get in the self correction. And I think it's hard to pause and to think, all right, how did that go? Like, if I'm honest, how would I have done that differently? Right. I think that's a challenge. I think sometimes life moves so fast that it's hard to really pause and to take time to be reflective. And I also think being reflective requires a lot of honesty and self awareness, which I think could also be challenging depending on who one is. So just the values and understanding what those are at the beginning, self-reflection, and the willingness to adapt, to be scrappy, to get back on course.
I like when you said self-reflection and self-correction.
Mhm.
I often call the self-correction recalibration
Oh, I love it. That works.
to get back because we can reflect, which is important, but if we're not willing to make any changes,
Mhm.
that can be a sticking point. And as
Right.
leaders, we have to be willing to make those changes to see how we can improve it and go. So I
Mhm.
want to ask you the last question. If your leadership style was a tree, plant, or flower, what would it be and why?
It would be a seed. If my leadership style were a plant, a tree, or a flower, it would be the seed of any of those things. And the
Oh,
reason that I say that is that I love seeds. Seeds are so packed with life. They're so packed with potential. And I
yes.
don't know that at any phase in life we ever leave having that volume of potential. I mean, I know as we get older, we begin to look back and we reflect and we think, well, if I were younger or, that moment is past, that window is past. But I don't know. Is that really true? I have no idea. My mom, she got her master's degree in marriage and family therapy in her late 50s. So, and now she's a therapist.
I'm glad you
I don't
said
know
that.
that the moment ever really passes.
I don't think the moment passes. I
Yeah,
think moments pass, but the moment you always can do something new, something
right,
different, go for
right,
your goals. I
right,
love seeing those stories when people go to school later in life or they learn a new hobby or they learned how to do weightlifting at 80 years old. It's or learned how to swim at 80. So I agree
right.
with you.
Because even if you're a plant or a tree or a flower, you still have the seed in you, right? So I love this idea of, eternally having the seed within and maturing only to produce another seed, right? To become a seed again, right? And so that's why I say seed.
China, thank you so much for your time today. I loved it. I learned
Thank
so
you.
much.
I'm so grateful, and it's just a pleasure to be here to chat with you.
Thank you for listening to Civically Grown. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, stay grounded and keep growing.